Well, welcome to Replenish, a hope that sustains in the midst of adversity. This is a safe place where I invite special guests to come on and share encouragement and insight to replenish us in the journey of raising kids from hard places. So whether you're an adoptive parent, kinship, foster, or safe family, this conversation is for you. I'm your host, Trista McGee, and this is my wonderful, amazing son, Jonathan. He's going to be co-hosting with me today. And today I have invited Derek Hamer, and he's going to join us for a conversation about the adoptee's perspective. So hi, Derek.
Hello, how's it going?
So good. So usually at this point, I read somebody's bio. But instead of reading their bio, I was wondering if you could share your adoption story with us and let everybody get to know you a little bit better before we jump into the questions.
Yes, I'd love that. I'd love that.
Awesome.
So I was born in Kenya 22 years ago. I was born to a mom who she was 14 when she gave birth to me. She never really was around. So then I was born, and then 2 years later, my little brother was also born. And again, she was never around. She'd been living on the streets for quite a while, whether she was sniffing glue, drinking homemade alcohol. And so oftentimes we spent time with our grandmother. And at about the age of 4, I realized that life in my home, it wasn't safe. I wasn't getting enough food. I was really neglected. There was no one watching over me. And so I decided I'd be better off on my own. And so I decided to run off to the streets. But I remember the first time I went to the streets, I went, and while I was out, a family friend actually found me and took me home. My mom was, again, never around, but on this particular day, she was home. And so he finds me, takes me home, and she was just very upset that I had ran off. And so she actually ended up beating me with like a leather belt. I still have scars on my back just to show the pain that I'd gone through. But that didn't stop me from going. I kept going. I realized that I wasn't gonna get what I needed here, so I kept escaping off to the streets. Life on the streets was hard. I was the youngest kid probably out there, one of the youngest kids, and so because of that, I often was the target of abuse from the older street children. They'd beat on me, but I occasionally made some friends with some of them, some of them ended up protecting me. And then I didn't have much food, but I remember I made friends with this guy who owned this restaurant. And what would happen was at the end of the night, when he'd close the store, I'd go to the back, he'd give me some food. I would eat a little bit of it and then walk the rest back to my brother in the village. And I did this like all the time for him. And then, I took the same route all the time when I went to the streets. I'd come home, give my brother food, and then go back to the streets. I took the same route every time, do the same thing. And I remember this one particular day, I was walking the streets like I normally did. And I felt God telling me, you need to go to this church. And I ended up going to this church. And when I got there, there was missionaries from America who were giving out food, they're giving out clothes, and they're bathing a lot of the street children who honestly hadn't had baths for a really long time. And it was funny because I remember this day because this would be the day that I actually ended up meeting my future family. I remember all of us were standing around and they're asking, all right, who'd like to be the first kid to get bathed? And me, being the competitive person I was then, well, actually, I still am today, I raised my hand and I was the first kid to go. And so they bathed me. And this was actually towards the end of their trip. And so like a lot of the clothes they had brought and a lot of the towels they had brought were actually gone. And so I remember they bathed me and they had no towel to dry me off with. But my future mom, actually, she was sitting there and she took me and just hugged me and was just wiping me off with her shirt. And she just, it was interesting because I think this was her first moment. And I think this was like the first moment that God probably was like, "This is your son." And she didn't know it at the time, of course. Um, but that night they realized like, okay, he's too young to be on the streets. We need to find a place for him. And that night we ended up going. Me and one of my friends ended up going to the place they were staying, and they're having this food, and there was this long table. I remember walking in, and I walked in, I crawled under the table, and I ended up sitting on the lap of the person that would be my future dad. I don't know why I did it. I don't know. I must have just had this feeling like that's that's the guy I want to hang out with. And so I sit on his lap, and I end up picking food off his plate. And now at the beginning of the trip, my dad had said, you guys, we're going on this trip. Don't get any ideas. We're going to adopt any kids. I'm sure a lot of you had the feeling like, okay, I'm just going. This isn't a, we're not going to adopt anyone. And so he's telling my family that just so they don't get any ideas. And they end up that night. My one of my brothers walks up to my mom and says, "Mom, I just got this weird feeling that we need to adopt this kid." And then my other brother walks up to my mom and says, "Okay, guys, I just got this really weird feeling that we need to adopt this kid, that God's telling us to adopt this kid." And all of them were like, "Okay, but wait, we can have these feelings. We got to see what Dad's thinking." So they walk up to Dad, and he goes, "Yes, I know. I also had this feeling that we need to adopt this kid." And so they're like, "All right, so we're gonna do it, but also we need to call our sister, because my sister, she'd been home, she wasn't able to go on the trip because she was sick." And so they're like, "All right, so all of us with this feeling, so we'll call her in the morning, we'll tell her." So the next morning comes, and they call home to my sister, and before they can say anything, she goes, "All right, guys, I need to tell you something." They're like, okay, we need to tell you something pretty exciting, but okay, you go first. And they go, she goes, "Last night I had this dream that you guys were bringing me home a brother named Derek."
Wow.
And
Wow.
like even that, like God was working. Like she wasn't able to come on the trip, she was sick, but even that, God was working in her life, and um, being able to show her that, yeah, like we found your brother. Um, and so that day, I told them that I also had a brother, and so I wasn't gonna just go by myself. I wanted my brother to come with me, and so we ended up going to the village where my brother had been. I took them back to where he was, and uh, when we got there, my grandmother walks out from the village, and my brother right there, and uh, she looks and says, "Oh my gosh, you guys, I need to tell you something. I've prayed every day that an angel would come and help out these boys,
Wow.
and you guys are the answer to our prayer." And so we got my brother, and the adoption process started. And as a lot of you know, it's not just an easy, okay, pack your bags, we're ready to go. It took some time, but we actually were really lucky because at the time, adoption in Kenya wasn't a closed country, and so you could actually adopt from Kenya. And we ended up, I think, 6 months is when they ended up doing it, which is relatively quick.
Yeah.
And so we were able to get adopted. We moved to California, and yeah, we went to Saddleback, and so it was super fun. I enjoyed that. And then we ended up moving up to Washington, and at first I did not want to go because who would want to leave sunny California and move up to rainy Washington? But we ended up going and moving to Washington because again, that was God's calling on our life. And um, I would love to say that everything was perfect to move to Washington. I mean, there's definitely its challenges, but uh, I love it. And I love that through my adoption story, God has been in it all around. And anytime I tell anybody my story, I just say that like I'm only 22 years old, and so there's no way that God's done with my adoption story. There's so much more left for Him to do. And so yeah, that's my story.
Yeah. Nice. Well, thanks so much for sharing that. That is just, it's incredible. I mean, just thinking about just how God can plan something and talk to every single person in your family individually and put that impression on all of you, and that your sister here in America had a dream like
Yeah.
that. Just I would think would be so comforting even in hard times, knowing that this is all part of God's story for your life and your family's life.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, without a doubt, that's exactly what we think. We think that even through the bad, through the good, God has molded our story together, and there's a purpose. He's working. He's working in it.
Yeah. Well, you joining us here today, I feel like is part of that purpose. It is encouraging for parents to hear from someone who's grown up as an adoptee, and just hear your perspective on it. And it gives us hope seeing that, wow, look at you. You're here. You've made it. You're thriving.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us today.
No, thank you. And I'd like to add just one thing that I've learned from my story, and if there was like any advice I could give, is that I think all of us are experts in our own story, and that's the thing I've really been able to figure out. And so for me, I'm going to say a lot of things that honestly are just like are coming from my story, and not everything that I'm saying is going to be able to apply into like your life or even like your children's lives, but I think the best thing that all of us could do is just be experts of our own story. And that's honestly one of the things that I'm going to attempt to do is just tell you my story.
That's great. Well, perfect. Like that's all we're asking.
Yeah.
So we took the top 12 questions that people asked us and compiled them. And Jonathan and I are going to take turns. I'm going to ask a question and he's going to ask a question. And we don't have to get through all of these. So don't feel any pressure to answer them in any concise way, or if we meander a little bit off topic or off that particular question, that's okay.
Yeah,
God's
awesome.
got a purpose in all of that. So
yes.
Just so you know, don't feel like you have to answer quick or short or any which way. We're just going to go through the questions and see what happens time-wise.
Sounds great.
All right. Okay, so first question. When do you feel the most loved by your parents? Like, what have they done in your life that's made you feel just the most loved by them?
Yeah. So what it's actually it's a simple answer, but I think it's pretty complex in itself. I think the best thing that I've experienced, and the best thing my parents have done to make me feel like I'm loved, is simply just saying that they loved me. And it's saying it over and over. And when I first was adopted, I didn't believe it. It was a weird feeling, especially since I had grown up in a place where I didn't feel like anybody loved me. I was living on the streets by myself. I didn't have anyone caring for me. I didn't feel like anyone loved me. And so when I was adopted, my parents would say, I love you. To me, I felt like that was just something like you say to your children, like, I love you, okay, I love you. But it wasn't until I got older that I realized that, oh my gosh, like there is nothing I can do to make my parents love me any less. Like, I remember as a kid, I was naughty. I did naughty things, but through that, I would get through them and be like, wow, okay, I'm still loved. They love me. And they'd say at the end of any situation, anytime I got in trouble, they'd tell me, and guess what? We love you. We love you. And it was weird. I was like, no, that's not true. Come on, I just messed up. There's no way you love me. But no, they kept saying I love you. And they said it over and over. They said it so much that I honestly could just recite it in my sleep. And then when I got older, I realized, oh my gosh, it's true. I am loved. There's nothing I can do to stop them from loving me. And that in itself made me grow closer to them, and it made me trust them more. And I think that that love created trust, and then that trust made me realize, yep, it's true. They love me. There's nothing I can do.
Nice. I love that.
Yeah.
That unconditional love, and that they actually use their words and express that
Yeah.
even after you were naughty.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
need that. We all need that.
We do.
Awesome.
My turn?
Sure.
Do you know what triggers your anger or fear, and how do you calm yourself?
What triggers my anger or fear? The thing I think that creates the most anger or even just fear in my life is this feeling of shame that if I've gotten in trouble, my mind tends to go to, okay, I'm not good enough. Okay, there's something wrong with me. Okay, wait, maybe I'm not loved. And so then I get really upset, and I'm like, yeah, wait, am I loved? Am I good enough? Oh, I messed up. I hurt someone. And so really, I think it's that shame. I mean, it's something that I've had to do lots of therapy for, to be able to help me to realize, no, Derek, when you make a mistake, it's like people still love you. You're not a horrible person. But I think that like if there's one, like I think one word I use all the time when I'm feeling things, it's probably that shame.
Mm. Mm. And how do you help yourself um, get past the shame?
Yeah. Oftentimes I actually end up just removing myself from the situation or where I'm at. So if I've gotten in trouble, I end up uh, walking into another room, maybe taking a walk. And oftentimes what ends up happening is in the process of me removing myself or simply taking a walk, I'm able to actually rationalize myself and get back to the thinking of like, oh, okay, you're okay. Everything's okay. Look, you're still loved. You're good. You're fine. And so I need a little time to think to myself before I can proceed to talking to whoever I'm talking to. And so I think the biggest thing has been removing myself from the situation.
Putting yourself in kind of your own timeout.
Yeah, it's true. It's my
Yeah,
own timeout. Yeah,
yeah. Taking a little breather.
yeah. I mean, the deep breaths have helped me. And so I'll take a walk. I'll just take deep breaths and realize, okay, you're good. You're okay. You're fine. And I think in those moments, I think I do feel God speaking to me and saying, Derek, you're fine. You're good.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's validating for all of us to hear. We
Yeah.
all need to take that time out sometimes just to center ourselves again. And yeah,
Yeah,
thank
I
you
think
for
it's
sharing.
good. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. What did your parents do that helped you feel connected to them? And what things made you feel like pushing them away?
Okay, so the things that my parents did to help me. Okay, um, so when we were younger, when we first adopted, every Saturday we would go and hang out with my dad, like all the time. We'd go and we would go on a bike ride. We'd go play baseball. We would go like every Saturday. That was something we did, and that made us grow so much closer to him. Just even him coming and like being a kid with us, like that made me trust him, and like he showed me like, man, he really loves us. He wanted to spend this much time with him. Um, and actually, when I got older, I was able to find out that actually it was he did that, and he was also helping my mom because my mom needed a break from us because apparently we were naughty, and so but so then with my mom, my mom actually oftentimes, actually growing up, she's the one that put us to bed, and so she would read all the stories to us. She would sing songs to us, and then the thing that I think that I really needed and was able to connect with her on is that she actually rocked us to bed up until I was too big to actually sit on her lap, but she'd rock us to bed, and it was because I never had that as a child from my mom,
Right.
and so having that from my adopted mom really brought me closer to her
Mm,
because I was missing that as a younger child, and so that was super important
yeah.
to me, and I think it was super important to my brother. It helped us really get close to my mom.
Yeah.
And then for the thing that wouldn't want me to or made me push away, uh, I think that honestly I could use again that shame feeling again. I think oftentimes in my life I push people away, and I especially push my parents away if I'm feeling super shameful, if I'm feeling like I've hurt them, and um, I'm like if I have this feeling of like okay I'm not good enough, I tend to kind of just push away. But my parents, what they do, they actually do a really good job of just telling me and letting me know, Derek, we love you. What you did was bad. You shouldn't have done what you did, but we're not going to stop loving you. And that kind of draws me back in, draws me back close to them.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
What do you wish your parents would have known about you that you weren't able to verbalize?
Yeah. So I actually wish my parents would have known about some of the abusive things that happened to me when I was in Kenya. They had ended up finding out later, But it wasn't until I was older that I came to a spot that I was like willing to tell them that they found out. Um, and then, I mean, when they found out, they were like, "Oh man, like we wish we would have known. We wish like we would have been there to be able to help you. We wish we would have been there to protect you." And so I just kind of like, and there was nothing like obviously there's nothing they could do. There's nothing they could do to stop it. It happened. But I do wish that like somehow they would have found out and made an attempt to stop some of the things. Because I think it would have made some of my like it would have made life a little easier when I got older. Because a lot of times if you don't work on stuff and you let it like if you just let it and put it away and let it go, oftentimes it comes back. It actually almost always comes back, but it usually comes back in a different way. And so if you have something that you feel like you don't want to share with your parents, maybe it's a therapist, maybe it's like I think just sharing with someone for sure helps you kind of just I wouldn't say necessarily get rid of it, but it helps you like makes it easier on you so you don't have to feel like you're holding this burden. And so yeah, I sometimes do wish that they would have found out at a younger age, but we ended up working on it, doing therapy for it, and so it ended up being fine. But I do wish they would have known.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk about that a lot, that if we don't like if I'm not willing to share about my stress or anxiety going on and
Yeah,
I stuff that it will come out some other way. Like
yeah,
it needs to come out, and it'll usually come out and I'm short tempered or I get really frustrated super easy. And so I just like what you were saying about um, how it is important for us to express some of those things,
yeah,
even if they're hard, because it is freeing and kind of releases that.
yeah. And I also felt like there was I mean I wanted to tell my parents a lot of things, but then there was also some things that I just felt like okay, before I tell my parents, I want to work on it with like someone else. And so that's when therapy played a factor for me. I would
Yeah.
talk to my therapist about it, and then my therapist would give me strategies on how to talk to my parents about it. Because a lot of times there's things that happen in our lives that like. We don't want to just walk up and tell our parents, but if we can have strategies on how to tell them, um, even from like just simple things of like if I've like gotten in trouble, or if I feel like I've hurt them, there's times when I wouldn't know how to communicate that I was sorry. And then through therapy, I was able to learn that, oh, it's okay actually to just talk to them. They're not going to be mad at you. They're going to love that you apologize to them. Uh, but I think that it's always good to be able to have other people to be able to talk through things if you don't want to directly talk to someone else about it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that and bringing up the importance of having someone else, like a therapist that, or somebody that you can work things through with if you aren't comfortable with doing that with your parents, which is totally okay. There's
Yeah,
nothing wrong with that. We all need that at time. I've been to therapy at different times in my life, and
yeah,
um, sometimes it just takes an outside perspective of someone that you're not in a relationship with to help you.
yeah,
So thanks for bringing that up. It's a good point for, I think, all of us, like especially parents, to remember.
yeah.
Um, how important is it for you to feel connected to your birth country and culture?
I think for me, it's extremely important. I at first when I was adopted, like I mean I knew I was Kenyan, but it wasn't until I got older that I became super proud of my Kenyan heritage and just how amazing like to me Kenya is. And so it made me super proud. And when I look about it, I look and think about it, I'm like super proud of it. I mean, I have flags in my room. I'll like sometimes I listen to Kenyan music. There's places here in Seattle that serves Kenyan food, and so I'll go to those places, and it always is good to be able to be like, oh yeah, that's like this is who I am, Kenyan. So I'm like super proud of it.
That's fun that there's a Kenyan restaurant there.
Yeah, there's actually a couple of Kenyan. Do you guys not have any in Orange
I don't,
County?
I don't know in a Benny.
No.
Mm-mm,
Yeah.
mm-mm.
What are some ways parents can help their kids connect to the culture of their birth country?
Yeah, so on that, so on the topic of being super proud of my culture, my parents, what they did, they actually did this like one of the when we were like maybe the first month or a couple months when we were here, uh, they had a friend from our church who was Kenyan, and she came over, and so she was able to talk to us. And this is back when we knew Swahili, so we spoke Swahili to her. She cooked us Kenyan food. My parents made sure to be able to. They read us stories of people from Kenya. We um, watched movies of people from Kenya. I mean, we watched Lion King. We loved Lion King, and we were like, oh, look, Kenya, Africa, like that's
Yeah.
our continent. And so it was super. I think to me that was super important to and my parents saw that it was super important to continue that. So we were proud of our culture, and so they brought people around. They'd cook us food. Um, Even now, I'm actually there's friends I have who are Kenyan, and their parents are from Kenya, and so I'll talk to them, and we'll sometimes go to like the Kenyan restaurant, and so that kind of again just makes me even more proud of my Kenyan roots. And so I'd say like for your kids, I mean, being able to read them stories from people from their culture, or even maybe the food, because I think it's funny because I love Kenyan food so much, and I need to have it more and more. I honestly think if I would have stopped just having Kenyan food, I probably would have just been like, okay, it's not that good. But there were times when I continued having it, whether we have people come over, or they'd make us food, or when I go to this Kenyan food, it brings it back. And then even whenever I go to Kenya, I enjoy the food more and more, and so uh, that makes me really connected to my culture, and it makes me stay connected to my culture. Oh, and then the other thing, sorry, is my parents, they work, our church does a lot of work in Kenya, and so our whole family knows about Kenya. People in our like church, they know about Kenya, and so they've taken trips to Kenya. I've taken 2 trips to Kenya, and so
Wow.
Kenya's all around us, uh, and so that, I mean, I think the biggest is that's been able to help us stay connected. I've through that I've been able to connect with some of my birth family in Kenya, and so I'm just all around me I have people who are connected, and that's helped me to stay connected.
How old were you when you first went back?
Yeah, I was 16 when I went back, and it's interesting because people always ask me like, well, when did your parents feel like you were ready to come back to go? And actually, the answer to that was they needed to wait until I was ready to go.
Yeah.
And so for me, it happened to be when I was 16 years old. I have my brother. He still doesn't want to go back. So you wait until your kid feels like he's ready to go back, when he wants to know more about his country. And I mean, obviously, as a parent, you want to assess to make sure that they're in a place where they can go. I had to do extensive therapy before I went to make sure that, yeah, okay, I really was ready to go back. But yeah, when I was 16 is when I went back.
Wow. So talking about, culture and birth country, do you identify then with American Black culture?
So it's funny. I was talking to my mom about this. I would say yes and no. I'd say yes because all around me, uh, people see me as and just assume that okay, he's black, so he's African American, and so I'm treated as African American all around. When in reality, I actually am not even African American. I'm just African.
Right.
And so because of that, I have to try to fit into that culture, because I mean that's sort of where people have placed me, and so I end up trying to fit in that culture. Also, while at the same time also trying to remember that I'm African, I'm Kenyan, so I also want to fit into my Kenyan roots. It's been hard because of that. I'm not fully immersed into one culture. Because it's interesting, because actually when we were first adopted, when African Americans found out that we were African, they actually didn't really want much to do with us. And there's a long history that you could read about it, about why that is. But the short answer, more of like they felt like Africans were sellouts to them when it came to the slave trade, and so when they found out that we were African, they just kind of were like, I don't know if we want to do much with that. But at the same time, once we got older, we made friends who were African Americans. We go over to our friend's house who were African American. Their parents, they didn't care. And so it's a pretty complex answer to try to fit into the Black culture, because again, everyone just kind of takes everyone and just sums you up and says, oh yeah, all of you are just Black. But there's more to it than just all of you are Black.
Yeah, I find even those questionnaires where they ask you your race, it's always African American, or I mean, even trying to check the proper box, I think sometimes can be complex,
Yeah.
Because
that's true. Look, they don't never offer you a country. It's not like they offer Rwanda or
right.
It's just.
Or can you just be African? Like
we're African. They don't have that. No.
Yeah, they just assume, like you said. Are there aspects of the American Black culture that you relate to more, and other areas that you don't, that I don't know what to say, like you just don't care for, or that you don't identify with? Or
yeah. So one of the things that my parents found out when we were younger is that, okay, more so because everyone's going to lump you up into the Black culture. My parents found it was important that we knew about Black culture, whether it was the art or the music, sports. Growing up, because when we got older, people would just expect that you know that. And so we'd listen to like rap music and learn about the history of rap music. I remember we'd read books about African American sports players or athletes or poets or just different people, because again, when you're older, people expect for you to know that. And what it is if you know that, that takes away another barrier that you have to go over. Because, and honestly, I'd say the same for whether you're just a different culture. I think people just kind of expect that, that I don't think it's fair. It's not a fair assumption, but it was something my parents found that, okay, let's help them out to know these, because again, people are going to expect that they know this.
Right. Especially in school atmosphere,
Yeah. I mean, I think school was definitely the hardest. I mean, when there's kids just assumed again that Derek, like, you're Black, but why don't you talk like you're Black? And again, even that's pretty complex in itself, because again, what they're really trying to ask is, why aren't you speaking like African Americans? And then that goes back to, okay, well, listen, first of all, I'm not African American. Second of all, I'm growing up in a white family, and so I'm not going to speak like that. I mean, because a lot of times you end up code switching and talking like the way or from different places or where you've grown up, and so it's just that wasn't me. And so again, that was another barrier I had to go over, is that people thinking like, you're not Black enough because you don't do this. And a lot of times it's just stereotypes. It's things that they assumed that because you were Black you had to do, or even things from like, oh, Derek, you don't use the N-word. It's like, no, I don't. That's just something I don't do. It doesn't make me any less Black because I don't use the N-word. It's just something I don't do.
Right. Yeah, such a complex subject.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to it.
Yeah, there is. Well, I appreciate you sharing what you have shared with us. It definitely gives me food for thought, and at some point, I'd love to continue that conversation too.
Yeah.
Do you want to read the next one?
Sure. Did you struggle in your teen years with your identity and feeling good about yourself?
Yeah. I think my teen years was I think that was the start of me finally realizing that, okay, I'm different than the rest of my family. People are going to expect different things from me than my family. People are going to see that I'm different. They're going to ask me different questions than the rest of my family. I mean, when I was younger, and I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this, going out to restaurants, having people stare at you because they're like, oh, okay, what's going on? What's different? But as a younger kid, I really didn't think much of it. My parents later told me, like, yeah, they would be super upset by people staring at them because just like anyone, you want to just go out to meal and have food. You're not trying to have people stare at you because, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have gotten this too, because oftentimes when they stare at you, it doesn't just stop at staring at you. It's you run into them. Oh, so what's up with your family? Why is it different? And so they feel just because your family is different, they can ask you questions that honestly just aren't appropriate and that you wouldn't ask other families. And so, my teen years, I think that's when I really started to realize, okay, I'm different. And I remember when I was in the sixth grade, I it was my first day of school up here. I went to school. It was fun, first day of school, and I got on the bus and came home. And when I got off the bus, I saw my mom coming to the bus to pick me up. And I got off the bus, and instead of going to my mom, I actually went right by her. And she was like, "Oh, what the heck, Derek? Why'd you do that?" And so later, when we got in the house, I walked in and I told her, and I said, "Mom, here's the thing. This is my first day at a new school, I'm trying to make friends with these new people. And I didn't want for the first time for them to look at me walk up to my white mom, because mom, as soon as they see that I have a white mom, there goes the questions. Why does he have a white mom? Oh, he's adopted? Why were you adopted? What happened to your birth family? What happened to you?" Questions that other kids wouldn't get on the first day of school, right? Because first day of school is all about meeting new friends. What sports do you like? What's your favorite food? But connecting, trying to make different friends, not trying to find out someone's whole story.
Yeah.
And so I told my mom that. I just pretty much said, "Mom, as soon as they find out that you're white, I'm getting all sorts of different questions beyond just why is your mom white?"
Wow. Yeah. That really puts it all in a different light,
Yeah.
like that. Those are heavy questions and those are very personal questions.
Yeah.
And yeah, otherwise you would, like you said, you'd be saying like, what kind of sports do you like? Or
Yeah.
yeah.
And my mom actually learned, it's funny because my mom learned a lot from that experience. What she learned was me walking off the bus wasn't me like trying to hurt her feelings or me ignoring her. What she learned was, oh, dang, actually, you're right. You are going to be treated differently. There's things are going to have, like, okay, I'm seeing that. So my mom actually, what she ended up doing was, I want to say for the rest of the year, she actually didn't even come to pick me up off the bus. She just let me walk home. And this was kind of like her way of saying, like, okay, yeah, Derek, I'm with you on this. I will help you. I'll help you along this. I'll let you come to me and tell me when you're ready.
Right. I love that. I mean, that was your way of what you needed to do to be able to take care of yourself. We talk a lot about self-care as adults, and, that was you as a child saying, this is what I need to do to be able to take care of myself and feel like I have some say and control over how all of this goes down.
Yeah.
And I love that your mom didn't take it personal and was able to say like, hey, I'm with you. Whatever you need from me, I will do that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it made her sad to think, oh, I want my boy to come off the bus and I want to be able to be like there and say, how was your day? But she didn't make it about her.
Yeah.
So
what she realized from that experience was actually that that she wasn't necessarily going to understand what I was going through. And so throughout my teen years, what she started doing to help me with that, because I mean, she wasn't going to necessarily understand everything about being Black. And so she ended up bringing other people around me who were African Americans, who were Black people, to be able to help me with the struggle. I mean, I remember we had a friend who we'd work on simple things like what happens when you run into a police officer. If you're driving and you get pulled over, what do you do in that situation? Simple things like that my mom, like, she'd never lived through. She didn't have kids that lived through, but there was friends that we had who had experienced these different things. And so simply by bringing them around us, it actually made our teen years easier. It wasn't perfect. There was definitely hard things about it, but it did help surrounding us with the people of our own culture to be able to help us through that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very cool. All right, let's see. Have you ever wished that you had the same skin color as your parents? And what do you wish they knew about you being Black?
Let's see. I so I,
I ask that because I know like a lot of it was kind of a blend of a bunch of questions. We got a lot of
yeah,
questions about, some kids go being uncomfortable with their skin color being different than their parents, or being a different race. Not everybody is, is Black and their moms are white, but some of them, they're Hispanic or Korean. So just being different,
yeah,
than their biological family. So just wondering, I think, like, did you go through that yourself? Was there a time where you wished that you looked like your parents and weren't different than them? And
yeah.
and if so, like, also in addition to that, like, what do you wish that your parents knew about what it was like being Black for you in a white family?
Yeah. So when I look back at it, I don't really remember wishing that I had the same skin color as like my mom. What I do remember is I remember when I was younger, I would like my older brother. I'd always wished that I had the same hair as my older brother, and I think that in itself was me trying to say that like I wish I wasn't so different. I wish I like. But then what was super cool was my parents took that moment, and what they were able to do was show me the beauties of my hair. And like, Derek, like your hair is like beautiful. Like, look at all these different things you can do. Whether like how you different haircuts you can get, different uh, different lines. And so they took something like that and they were able to turn around and be like your hair is just like it's beautiful. Like it's, and so I remember being like, huh, my hair is beautiful. I can do so many different things to my hair. Uh, and so yeah, I guess for me it was more of just like wishing I had the same hair. But I guess I mean again that'd be the same in the same line of like wishing not to be different. But they were able to use that really as a teaching moment and be able to show that Derek, you're special the way you are, and there's something special about being Black. There's something special about your hair. Um, and I think that definitely made a difference in my life. And for the thing that I do wish is my parents understood the struggles that just I have as being someone who's Black in a white world or in a white country. Uh, they just I feel like there's things that just they could never understand. But my parents, what they did do was they made sure to read about different people. They made sure to listen to different people. And I told you earlier, like we'd have friends over who were Black, and they would talk to my parents about the struggles they'd gone through, things that my parents never would have imagined, things my parents would have uh, never would have thought about. And in that, the thing that my mom recognizes and she thinks about all the time is that my mom had to recognize that when I left the house or my brother left the house, the world was going to treat me differently. I wasn't going to have the same experience as my older siblings. I wasn't going to, world's going to look at me different. When I went into a store, I couldn't walk into a store with a hood on and my hands in my pocket. People wouldn't think, oh yeah, he's just walking the store. People might think, oh, is he going to steal something? Is he doing, what's going on? I mean, when we were younger, we could be walking by people and people would be like, oh, look how cute they are. Once we got older in our teen years, we'd be walking by, people would cross to the other side. And so my mom had to recognize that, wow, like the way Derek is going to be seen in the world is completely different than I've experienced, or even my biological kids that I've raised. Um, and she had to recognize there was nothing that she could do about it. She could help me by bringing people around me. She could help me by talking to me about it. But in reality, as soon as I left the house, the world was going to treat me the way the world was going to treat me.
Wow. That's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, and I think that that is something that even I myself will need to just be aware of, that
Yeah.
I won't know what that experience is like and won't ever be able to fully know that. And I think
Yeah.
you said it so well, and just in that, your parents are trying real hard, but to just come to terms with that, they're not going to be able to fully understand that. And I think, I don't know, I think that's just something for me to ponder, down the road. So I appreciate you sharing that.
How has your faith helped you in all this, and what is your favorite Bible verse?
Yeah, I think that my faith really has played a huge role in my life. I mean, like I told you guys earlier, like the start of my story was God in it everywhere, right? Whether it was telling my sister, telling my different family members in Kenya that I was going to be part of their family. So since that day, I think I've just, through my faith, I've known that, okay, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And even when I'm going through super hard things and then struggling, I always have this constant reminder from God, Derek, I love you. Like you are special. You have a purpose for your life. There is a reason that your life is the way it is. And that is always so comforting to know, especially when I talk about things like identity issues, wondering like, where do I fit in the world? It's always awesome to be able to have like God telling me that, Derek, I love you. I made you like this for a reason. And then as far as my favorite Bible verse, it's I think for my favorite Bible verse, it probably is Galatians 6:9. And it says, "Don't let us not be weary of doing good, because at the right time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." And in that, I think that has helped me, and it's helped my family in a huge way to know that there's some hard things about adoption. Adoption is not easy, but God has a plan for our lives, and we can't give up. We just can't give up.
Awesome. Do you want to share your? Thanks for sharing that. When did you know God when you were younger? You were like in Kenya, or when did you first? Yeah, did you?
Yeah, it's funny because like I always like I don't remember much about church in Kenya, but I remember I'd go to church. I remember going to church, but I don't remember much about it. But I think that the start of my journey with God was honestly just the feeling of Him telling me, go to this church. Because I mean, had I not gone to the church that day, my life could have been so different. And so it's, and I don't know how that works, and I think about it all the time. Like, I was 5 years old. I don't remember a lot of things from my life, but how was I able to be told to go to this church? And I just went, and then that was the start of my adoption story. And so when I think about God, I think that was the start right there. Was Him telling me to go, and then even just me obeying and saying, okay. And I mean, at 5 years old, I probably didn't even know who God was. I didn't, especially in Kenya. And so, but I felt Him saying, go, and I went.
That's so cool. That gives me goosebumps.
Yeah. It's definitely weird, and it's amazing, like in a weird, amazing way, for sure.
It's the Holy Spirit. He works in mysterious ways.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. Do you yearn to know your biological family? And you did share a little bit that you had gotten in contact with them, as you've gotten older. And how often do you think about them? Some of the kids were wondering these kind of questions,
Okay. So when I was 16, I went back and I saw my. Really, when I was 16, the point of that trip was to go back and see my birth family. It was like my return home. I wanted to see my birth family because hadn't seen them since I was adopted, and so this was the point of this trip. And so when I went back, I ended up seeing my birth mom, and when I went, she just like didn't say much.
Mm.
I mean, I was really excited to see her. I hadn't seen her in all these years. I thought about her, and when I went, it's just nothing. She didn't say anything. She didn't even. She barely looked up at me, and
Mm.
I left that trip super disappointed and just super sad, and just like, and honestly, like again, it made me just my relationship with God. I was questioning, just asking God, why was that our interaction? Like, I was super excited, God, after everything I'd been through. I wanted a connection with her. Like, I wanted her to tell me that she loved me. I wanted her to say something. She just didn't say much. And then last summer, we went back again. But what was weird was this time we weren't even planning to see my birth family. In fact, I didn't really want to. But I ended up, my uncle who lived there, he's a couple of years older than me. He asked if he could come hang out, and I said, yeah, I mean, come to dinner, meet me at dinner. We're going to be at blah, blah, blah. And so it was interesting. We showed up to dinner, and when we were there, he says, hey, I brought the whole family. And I'm thinking, what the heck?
Surprise!
I was like, and then it was weird because I was really nervous. I became really nervous because he said, do you want, like, can they come see you? They want to see you. And I was super nervous because I went back to the feeling I've had before of like, last time I was here, my mom didn't say anything to me. She didn't want anything to do with me. So like, I really, this time's probably going to be no different. Like I have no, like my expectation is just going to be the same. It's going to be different. And again, I don't know why I said yes. It was really quick. Like, okay, yes. Cause I could have said no. I could have said no, actually dinner's almost over. Or, no, maybe another time. But I said yes. And then one of the weirdest things was when we showed up to meet them, because we went outside and we met them. Their whole family was there. My mom was there, but she looked different. Like this time she had dressed up.
Mm.
She was smiling. She was attentive. And then the most amazing thing is that she looked at me towards the end of our conversation. She said, Derek, I just want to say I'm sorry that I haven't been there for you. I'm sorry that I abandoned you. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to care for you. And in this like beautiful moment, I looked at her and I was able to forgive her. I said, I forgive you. And I mean, I'd learned from this author named Brian Stevenson that each of us are more than the worst thing we've ever done. And so in that moment, I just looked at my mom with that. I looked at her and just forgave her, much like Jesus had forgiven me. And so it was honestly a cool moment. But the thing about that is, just because someone says they're sorry, just because you forgive someone, that doesn't mean your relationship is just magically paired together. Her asking for forgiveness and me saying I forgave her didn't fix the brokenness or the pain that had been in my heart. What it did do is it gave me this hope that maybe this can be the start of us somewhat having a relationship. Our relationship was never going to be the same. It's never going to be the way I wish it had been. But this was kind of maybe just the start of like, okay, we can have somewhat of a relationship. And so on that aspect, I do think about my family all the time. It's hard not to when you were abandoned and left alone, because I mean, with that comes so much trauma and so much hurt that you're gonna honestly always think about that. Whether you're in school or and people are asking you about like your family history, and you have to be the kid that, oh wait, I don't know my family history. I don't know where my eyes color comes from. I don't know why my nails are shaped the way they are. And so that is something you're constantly having to think about. And so I'm always thinking about my birth family, just because even though it's been such a hurtful part of my life,
Mm-hmm.
the weird part is it's still part of my life. And there's really, in a weird way, there's nothing I can do to take that away. But again, God can use our brokenness. God can maybe use this as I don't know. It's not going to be, I mean, it's not going to be the relationship I want it to be, but it can be somewhat of a relationship with my mom.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, that even though it's there's brokenness there, that it's still
Yeah.
something that you think about, and it's, still something that you yearn for.
Yeah.
And
I do, and oh my goodness, through therapy, like it's funny, talk about it all the time in therapy. If it's something that I want so badly, it's because, and it would be okay if I just completely shut my mom out and just was like, yeah, like I'm done. Like she was so hurtful to me. She's so like she abandoned me. Uh, but like there is that part of me that's like I want that motherly love. I want that so badly. Part of the problem is I don't think I'm ever really going to get it, but it is that yearning, like you're saying, like I want it, but it's not gonna. It's honestly just never going to be the way I wanted.
yeah, I I can hear that. And I think that, like what you were saying earlier, that's where uh, the faith comes in, that God has a certain story for us, and we can't
Yeah,
never predict that journey. And we can take our brokenness and our pain to God and let Him do what He will with it.
yeah,
I'm sure you would have never chosen this story for your life, but like our pastor always shares, is that God's going to take your greatest hurt and He's going to use that for good. And I
yeah,
see that you using that right now. You're stepping out and starting, to um, be an advocate for other adoptees and be able to help them in their journey.
yeah,
So I love that. I love that you're being bold about that, and your transparency. I think the community just really appreciates that. So
no, thank
thank you
you,
for that.
thank you.
Thank you for that. So that's about all of our time.
Okay,
Um, I do always ask 3 questions. I know we've already asked you a lot of questions, but I do always like to end with 3 easy questions.
yeah,
Maybe not easy, but they don't have to be really in depth. They can just be what they are. So the first one, do you want to read the first one? No. Okay. The first one is, what brings you joy?
brings me joy. So people, I think just people bring me joy. So I mean, as you can imagine, this has been super hard for me because I'm a people person, and so it's funny. I think like whenever we walk outside and our neighbors are out there, and make sure to stay the 6 feet apart. I always walk up and I'm like, oh, and everyone's like, no, 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 can't shake hands. No, I'm like, oh gosh, I forgot. But I'm such a people person. That's just like, that's what makes me happy. It makes me happy to be around people, to talk to people. Uh, yeah, so just people bring me joy.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that answer. And then if you could say one thing to your younger self, what would it be?
Okay, so if I could say one thing to my younger self, um, well, besides wash your hands, um,
That's a good one for now.
yeah. Besides that, I'd tell them, hey, you're loved, um, and that God for sure has a plan for your life. Because if I looked back, and there were times when I was just super unsure why my story was the way it is and why there was so much hurt in it. But now, as I've gotten older, I've realized that, oh my goodness, God has a plan for my life. He is working in it. Even something like when we moved up to Washington, I hated the rain. I really just didn't want to be here, but God was able to use that. So I would just tell myself, like, honestly, keep going. God's going to do great things in your life. Just keep following Him.
Mm, that's beautiful. Thank you. And then lastly, what foster or adoption myth would you like to just blow up? When you hear it, you just go, ah!
Um, I, I'm trying to think. Foster adoptive myth that I don't.
Or like a stereotype, maybe. An
Yeah,
adoption
stereotype.
stereotype. You just go, that is so lame.
Gosh, I was think there was one that I was talking. Gosh, there was one that I was talking. I'm trying to remember what I was talking to my mom about the other day. There was one that I was like, just can't. Oh, wait, this is this is the one that when I hear it, I'm like, ugh. I'm like, people oftentimes will say like, so what does your real family think about this?
Mm.
And I'm like, a real family? I'm like, what do you mean, a real family? It's interesting because both my adoptive family and my biological family, they're both real as can be. Now,
Okay.
there's different ways to call that. So when I hear people say like real family or like when they're describing, it's oftentimes when they are describing my birth family, they'll call them my real family. And to me, I'm like, my adoptive family is just as real. And so you don't need to call them real family. You can say my biological family or my adoptive family. I don't need to call them my real family because they're both real.
Yeah, I've heard
Yeah.
that too. And I think usually that's just uninformed people.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Because once you get into this world, you know that there's no like that. We are. There's no real family and non-real family. We're
Yeah.
family.
Family. Yep.
So thank you for sharing that. We have run out of time. I'm going to make a few announcements before we sign off real quick.
That's good.
So we have a new support group starting tomorrow. I just wanted everybody to know about that. If you want to pin me, Max. And that's going to be a 13-week video-based curriculum featuring Karen Purvis. And the study's called The Connection, Where Hearts Meet. That's going to be online. And my husband, Max McGee, will be hosting that. He's going to put in the chat room a link to register for that. It's going to be Wednesdays at 1 p.m. And we will also follow up in our follow-up email. We'll put that information. And then the next upcoming conversations with Replenish, next week we're going to have Katie Edwards. She's a junior high pastor from Saddleback Church, and she's going to be talking to us about just navigating screen time. And then the 28th, we're going to have Deborah Gray, and she is a licensed social worker and specializes in children's attachment, grief, and trauma issues. And then after that, we're going to have Melissa Corkum and Lisa Quails, and they run the Adoption Connection podcast. So, and then we are also in the chat room. Mac's going to put Derek's link. He has done a video that was going to be he was going to speak at the last Refresh conference that just had been canceled last month, I believe it was. And they videoed him for that. So Max will put a link to that also in the chat, and we will also put that in the follow-up email as well. So, and if you want to stick around for the after party after we sign off, I'm going to still be here for another half an hour from 5:30 to 6 for anybody who just wants to connect about anything. So anyways, Derek, I wanted to just thank you once again. I so appreciate you coming on the call with us, and just I appreciate your honesty and transparency. I'm just so proud of you that you're willing to be so open and transparent. Just thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, you have a great rest of your night.
It
And
was
Jonathan
awesome.
has been a great co-host.
Jonathan, you did great. Thank you. So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Derek.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
So anyone who wants to stay on, feel free to stay on. People are going to probably start dropping off right now. So I'm just going to